So, David, now, for me and for those of us in the online gaming industry, you are famous, or let's say infamous, in the gaming industry. So for those maybe who don't know your story, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about how you started in the gaming industry, when, and what it was like back then.
I think possibly I'm the oldest man in the room, I'm not sure. But I've had 40 years in the gaming industry, 42 years to be precise. And in 1976, I dropped out of art college and was bumming around at home. And my father said to me one evening, he says, "David, there's a job for you in the local betting shop. Go and get it." So I go down to the local betting shop, and I go in, I come out, I go in, I come out. And I'm a bit nervous because 2 months before, I've been ejected for underage gambling. So I go home, and my father said, "Did you get the job?" I said, "The manager was out." He said, "Tomorrow you go back and you get the job or find somewhere else to live." And I started with Ladbrokes and stayed there for 24 years.
Wow. And that was where? That was in a small town in the north of England, right?
A small town in Scotland called Pennycook.
In Scotland. And, you know, so I think there was another reasonably famous person in the online gaming industry, Mark Blandford, who was also, that you met at that time, right?
Yeah, well, I met Mark. I nearly said Blandford. I met Mark in 1989. In 1989 in Malvern in Worcestershire. And those of you that may recognize Mark, he's famous for many things. He's a serial entrepreneur. But he was the founder of an online brand called SportingBet, which was a competitor of mine, a smaller competitor of mine in early 2000. But I met Mark when he was a bookmaker with a small store in Malvern. And we have two things in common. We've both led a public company, a public gambling company in the UK, both online companies, and we both graduated from Wolverhampton University.
Oh, I did not know that, Wolverhampton University. So, yes, you were both bosses, or ended up being bosses of some of the biggest sports betting companies in the world. And the company that you ended up working for, Bet on Sports, or being the CEO of, may I say, heading up, I should say, was one of the first flotations, or the first flotation of a USA-facing sportsbook. And also the second largest listing on AIM that year, which was 2004, I believe, in London.
Yeah, we took Bet on Sports from early 2000 till 2004, from 0 to 27 million EBITDA, and then floated on AIM. We floated a business, don't tell anybody, a business that was illegal.
It's okay, the DICJ is not here tonight, I don't think.
No, if you read the prospectus and you read the disclaimers, it says this business may not be legal.
Wow. So what did it take to bring that company to IPO?
Well, 7 days a week for 4 years, to be honest with you. Hard work, grind, a transformation from an entrepreneurial structure to a PLC is a journey that's peppered with hell. But when you achieve it, it's amazing.
And I think you've got some stories about some of the investors in those early days as well. So the people that you convinced to invest in this company.
Well, our keystone investors were quite famous. I mean, Morgan Stanley, Fidelity Investments, and Merrill Lynch were all keystone investors in Bet on Sports. But one of the most interesting things on the roadshow was I went to Morgan Stanley's office in London. And I tell you, I've seen the biggest boardroom table I've seen in my life. It's almost as long as one of the tables here in the room this evening. And I'm sat there with my finance director in front of 3 people. The head investment guy, his secretary, and another analyst. I have 38 pages to go through and explain the merits of Bet on Sports. At page 8, the investment guy stood up and said, "I'm sorry, I have to leave." He says, "But I'll tell you this. I know about sports betting in the USA, and you present very well, and I'll be coming in." And he came in for £5 million.
Nice one. So you were running the business out of Costa Rica, correct? At that point, yes.
Yes.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what it was like in the early days of internet betting and what it was like being in Costa Rica, and maybe whether you see any similarities between what the industry was like in Costa Rica back then with perhaps how it is in Asia now.
Well, let's start with Costa Rica first, in the infancy of the industry. You always understand in this business, whether you are online or you're land-based, it's about infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. And you know that Bet on Sports was USA facing, so the weekend in the football season was very important. And we lost X amount of $1 million one Sunday because our system went down. Our system went down because the server overheated. The server overheated because the fan broke. The fan broke because it had been repaired by a paperclip and not a $3.75 replacement fan. And that's the early days of this industry.
Interesting challenges for sure. And around that time then, so you met with Monteith Illingworth, who is one of your nominations for this evening. So maybe give us a little bit of background about why you contacted him and your relationship with Monteith and why that was important for the industry.
Well, at that time, Monteith worked for a PR agency called Rudafin. And Rudafin are quite famous for being very activist in the United States and taking on good causes. And I believe that the gaming industry was a good cause. And there was no reason why the gaming industry shouldn't prosper in the USA. And I think if you look today, I've been proven correct because it is finally prospering in the USA. And we put together a grassroots campaign and did many things that raised the profile of our industry for the right reasons in the right places.
So one of the first proponents for gaming regulation all those years ago, and as you say, no, now it's finally come to fruition. How long has it taken? Only another 20 years or so.
They were 10 years too late.
10 years too late. So Monteith could not be here tonight. He really wanted to be, but instead he has sent us a little video tribute. So we're going to just dim the lights, and if we can have some quiet to just listen to the tribute from Monteith. Thank you.
Thank you, Asia Gaming, for giving me this great honor to celebrate David's award and the recognition for David. David, sorry I can't be there. Like you, I travel all over the world. I'm in our New York office this week, not Hong Kong. But I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to try and cover a lot of ground here. David, you're one of my personal and professional heroes. For everyone else in this room, a little ancient history on our association. I met David in 2001. I got a call from someone with a Scottish accent with a company called Bet on Sports, and he wanted some PR help in the US. I'd seen their ads on top of taxis, and anyway, we started working together, and David was on a mission, which was to legalize online sports betting in the US. He was a little too effective on that, I think as a lot of you know, because the feds didn't agree with him. And the rest is history, as the saying goes. As you probably know, in 2006, David was met by the feds at an airport in Dallas, and then fought that for some years, but did end up going to prison for that, I believe, very unfairly. But here's the amazing thing about you, David, is, and as you know, we've talked about this in the years since. Let me tell you a story about how a 5'8" Scotsman who's maybe 150 pounds at the time, it was in a dormitory with 900 Mexican drug lords and gang members, how he survived. David told me this story in a French restaurant in Mayfair in London. Three things. Number one, because he was in online gambling, they thought he was connected to the mob and a made man. He had muscle and money. They left him alone. Number two, David, who, while he was awaiting settlement of his case in St. Louis, became a master's runner and ran in marathons, really became an elite runner. and then at the prison would hold runs in the yards, and they would bet on him, and I'm sure he always won. And number 3, David stayed out of other people's business. But look, David, you're, as F. Scott Fitzgerald said, there are second acts in American lives. I think you're in the 4th, 5th, or 6th act. When David started rebuilding his life, he set up fashion brands in China, learned Mandarin, took up gourmet cooking in Taiwan, and then you've done amazing things. So I'm sorry I can't be there. I want to congratulate you. You're with your friends and colleagues. I wish I was there. And I just want to finish by citing some lines from a Frank Sinatra song called My Way that reminds me of you, David. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall, and I did it my way. Cheers, man.
Well, that was a wonderful tribute, as you can tell. And I guess we've come to the point, actually, that Monteith alluded to, and which is probably why you're famous to a lot of people anyway, which is that you fell foul of the US law, which I don't know if any of you know, but obviously in, I think it was 2006, UAGA came into force. Online gambling became illegal in the United States. And well, perhaps I'll let you tell the story. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the circumstances leading up to you pleading guilty.
Well, it's not a subject that's very easy to talk about, but it's very simple. I was traveling back from London from my AGM of a public company. I was a proud CEO of a very profitable, exponentially growing company. And I changed planes in Dallas, Texas, USA. When I came off the airplane, the feds were waiting on me and they took me into custody. It took me 5 years and 9 months to get free. I spent 42 months on house arrest. No work, no income, no travel, waiting on an outcome. I eventually reached a deal with the United States government that said, I will admit to breaking your laws in return for going to prison for 33 months, of which I did about 17 and a half months because of various good behavior 1 month before I actually entered prison. And that 5 years and 9 months changed my life. It changed my life in a very positive way because it taught me to be humble. It taught me to be resilient. It taught me that I was privileged and very fortunate to be in the position I was in. And it made me the man I am today.
Thank you. Thank you. I think he deserves that and more.
Oh,
David, you are a legend, truly.
Just one other thing, one very good thing. It made me 150 pounds and a 2 hours, 59 minutes marathon runner at 55.
And that's also, I mean, I think you already knew Sue Schneider, didn't you, at the time? But she was a good friend to you during those years because you were in St. Louis and house arrest, and she was living very closely in St. Charles. So some of you may know who some of us call the godmother of iGaming, who is Sue Schneider. So, yes, I mean, you've had a very interesting history. I mean, maybe you can tell us a little bit then about how you, as he alluded to, rebuilt your life. What have you been doing since then? I know that you can speak pretty good Mandarin, for example.
Not that good, actually, but better than the most, or better than most Scotsmen at 62 years old. Let me tell you a little bit about Sue Schneider first. I'd love to go on the public record and say that her moral support, her physical presence, and her ears were very, very, very helpful and very significant in allowing me to use the time when I was stuck in St. Louis productively. And I will never, ever forget her. She will be a friend to my last day for that.
Oh, well, that's lovely. Thank you very much. I think many of us know Sue, and we feel the same about her, but
the afterlife, if you want to call it that, the afterlife is, for me, the first thing I wanted to do actually was come back to Asia, because prior to 2006, I was very, very focused on taking my business into Asia because I saw the potential here, and I envisaged what has become a reality, which is a burgeoning business that accommodates land-based and online gaming and has grown and grown and employs millions of people across the whole region. So I came back to Asia, but I decided that maybe not in the first instance I should get involved in gaming again. So I actually went to China and opened a fashion business in China. And whilst that business wasn't successful commercially, it was certainly enriching personally, because I got to travel all around China. I opened 5 stores across China. I fell in love with the language and the people and the food and the baijiu and the karaoke and everything else you know. And I stayed here. I went to Taiwan. I learned Chinese for 3 years and continued running. And somebody came knocking on my door saying, "Hey, you don't want to do this anymore. You want to come and work back in the industry." So I'm delighted to be back in the industry. I'm delighted to be in Asia, and I'm delighted to be with friends this evening.
fantastic. I think that's an amazing comeback story, and the fact that, you know, you came back to Asia, but then you made the effort to integrate your way back into Asia by learning Mandarin for 3 years, you know, and I think that's a lesson for everybody. I think we can all learn really from about how to deal with adversity and how to bounce back from somebody like David. So I guess really I just want to ask you if you have any final parting words of wisdom for us, or any sort of vision for the future of the gaming industry in Asia.
You know, far be it from me to tell anybody how to lead their life, but if I have to say something, it's very short and it's very simple. Decide what you want to do and go and do it.
Yeah. You can't say fairer than that, can you? Well, I would like you to join me in thanking David. We will be seeing him again shortly at the end of the evening when he's inducted. But thank you so much for sharing your story. And if anybody wants to ask him any questions, this is somebody that we can all learn from. Thank you very much, David.